I did manage to make it into the shop for a little while this afternoon. Got a little bit done. Cut out the back trunk floor plan all the way to the inner part of the factory frame rails on both sides. This right here is the factory driver's side upper shock mount. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to leave that in or not. I may use the factory shock locations on it. The passenger side is right under here. This car has some rust, so I went ahead and cut out the worst of the damaged materials. Along the back side of the car, I put in a 2x3 piece of tubing. This is notched on the inner part of the factory frame rail and actually touches the outer part of the factory frame box, I guess, if you don't even want to call it a frame rail, right in here. I've also installed the sliders for the rear mounts of the leaf springs. The springs have already been relocated in, about 1.5 inches, just enough to get them inside of the factory wheel wells. Over here you can see the slider mounts. Basically, when you put them in, you just let the spring hang at full droop. Put the pin almost all the way at the front, and then that should leave you plenty of running clearance in the back. The 9-inch housing I've cleaned up. It's somewhat centered in there. It's just laying on top of the mounts right now. I've not tacked it in for good. I do need to get to my wheels yet, so I can measure for axles and order those and finish up the rear end housing. Once I get a little bit further along, then I'll decide where my parachute mount will come through and put some bracing through here on both sides to brace it and to brace the back of the car. This area right in here was rusted pretty bad. I went ahead and cut all it out. I'm not sure if they make any patch panels for these cars or not. If not, I'll have to fabricate some sheet metal to go back in here, and I can just plate back over this right here, since the rear bars on the roll cage will mount right back in here to stiffen the car up. Then I can also run some bracing off of here down to the slider to reinforce this, because this is just kind of a Z section of sheet metal for the frame rails. They're not actually a boxed frame rail on a Mustang II. The front mounts are in for the leaf springs. They're in where they go and shimmed correctly. I do need to pull them back out, clean the paint off, and then put them back in so I can weld them up. But right now I'm just waiting on my cow tracks to come in. Then I can bolt all this up, finish that, weld on the leaf spring pads. Should be able to order axles either end of next week or the week after. They usually come pretty quick from Moser or Strange or whatever brand I get. There'll be a 40 spline axle, just because I happen to have an extra Strange center section with a 40 spline spool in it. So we'll just put 40s in this car. It may be a little bit overkill, may not. One good thing about it, if you put a little bit bigger in there, then you'll pretty much never have to worry about it, especially in a car with this small of a tire and no more power than this motor will make. We're not building a Pro Mod. Up here, you can see the factory spring buckets. If I can get this centered up a little bit more. This is the locating pin, basically right over the middle of the leaf spring. Now it's in the end bolt, so originally this bolt and this bolt and this bolt hole and this bolt hole held the leaf spring in. Now it's been moved over as far as it can on the inside right here. I trimmed it a little bit down there, but I just wanted to get it over far enough to pick me up a little bit of room, get the leaf springs away from the brake brackets. And it just needs to be right inside of this, since I'm not mini tubbing this car. If I do mini tub it, then plans have changed, and I imagine it'll just get another set of springs and they can be relocated inboard. At that point, we'll be trying to go a lot faster, and it'll need different tie-ins. But at this point, we've made some progress. If you wonder why I cut this floor pan out right here, one of the biggest reasons is the spare tire well, the way it drops down. Of course, this rear end is all the way down right now because it's hanging on the springs. But what will happen is the back of the housing, especially with a back bracing on it, will actually hit that spare tire well. So it needs to go, and honestly, it's just way easier to make fuel cell mounts and battery mounts with a flat area and not have to go up and down in and out of a spare tire well. Really no use for it, and it just gets it out of the way. I did keep it just in case I pop into a class that requires it still under the car. I've done it before on Fox bodies where you just trim off all the extra brackets, shoot a few screws in it and poke it back under the car, and it's close enough. It passes tech inspection that way. But for me, I like cutting it out because it just makes life a lot easier, especially when you're trying to mount weight under the car and anything else, fuel pumps, fuel lines. There's just no reason to have it in there. And I don't plan on driving this car around enough to really need a spare tire. So, but that's it so far. We'll get back to it when I get back from work later in the week. Y'all have a good week. Be safe out there.